You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today, my guest is Lior Arussy, and we're going to speak about becoming the author of your own life, of your own career. It is a very interesting and inspiring topic. So Lior is an investor, he's a speaker, he's an award-winning consultant, he's an entrepreneur, he's doing many interesting things. Today, we're going to speak about his book, Dare to Author. And many aspects connected with this book. Hi, Lior. It's great to have you on Ideas and Leaders.
Hi, Elena. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Yeah, it was so interesting when I saw your book. When I saw that the book's name is Dare to Author, and it is about becoming an author of your career and becoming an author of your life. I just love the analogy. So can you tell a little bit more about the book? What is the main purpose and what it's about?
Sure. Thank you. One of the things I've been spending or dedicated my last couple of decades, my time, is to help organizations transform themselves to the next stage of their life, to the next chapter of their lives. And I got a privilege of working with a wide variety of brands and wide variety of industries. And I noticed a very consistent issue. And the very consistent issue is that the employees and the organization fails to move forward because they're stuck in an old story. They define themselves in an old way. And it's like that chapter is not completed. So I'll give you an example. So we all experienced COVID, a couple of years ago. And I had clients calling me saying, I don't know what to do. And I said, what's the emotion that you have right now? He says, it feels unprecedented. It feels like I've never had something like this before. I said, that's true factually. But when you say unprecedented, you also say I'm helpless and I have no tools to deal with the issues. So how about if we go to the last time you were unprecedented in a situation like that? And how did you emerge from that? And what we did is we did an exercise in writing the chapter of that event. And we wrote the chapter of that event. Our focus was not just on emotions, but our focus on what tools did you use, what worked for you, what didn't. So when we finished that chapter, they discovered the tools that they can have for the future. And the book's main premise is we often feel helpless. We often feel victims when we didn't author the last chapters of our lives. So we didn't convert that experience into future resilience and into future strength. And the purpose of the book is not just to author in order to look at it and say, oh, I'm a great person, or I suffered really greatly. The purpose of it is to really convert that and learn about yourself. What skills do you have? What superpower do you have? What makes you so special in dealing with situations so you can deal with the next challenge and turn it into an opportunity in a much better way?
Oh, it is so interesting. I'm really interested in those strategies. So I think that you mentioned about changing the mindset and telling yourself old stories. I think that we get a lot about this positive attitude and changing the attitude kind of messages. So, do you have any specific strategies? Because things like be positive or be, as you mentioned, right? It does not work. The general
Yes,
change your attitude, change your story. So what are some of the steps that we can do? What are some of the strategies to change the old narrative?
So thank you very, very much for bringing it up, because this is not about let's feel good despite the fact that it's painful. Let's try to package it in sugar so it feels a little bit better for us. So the bitter situation. Life is full of unexpected and unplanned situations. This is a fact. Okay? We have a choice. We can be a victim of it, or we can try to get out of it. And this is not about just mindset. What I'm arguing in the book is that there is a process in which we take those unplanned events, learn from them, and convert them into resilience for the future. The fact that we have experienced something and we are now more aware of our ability to deal with those situations gives us more power and more strength later. So this is not about spirit. This is about a discipline of converting those experiences into future strength. So from a step standpoint, I actually have a whole chapter dedicated to COVID because COVID happened to all of us at the same time. And we were all, the old starting point of the whole world was helplessness. We all experienced extreme helplessness when the authorities basically told us, we don't know what's going on, we don't know how to solve it, and so on and so forth. And we all had to emerge from it in one way or another. Some people did it by drinking alcohol or using drugs, and other people volunteered and helped other people, so we dealt with it differently. So what I provided in that chapter, and in every chapter of Dare to Author, there are guiding questions that are supposed to have you ask yourself questions that you did not ask yourself. So in the COVID chapter, we have a set of questions around what were your emotions? How did you feel in that moment? So let's understand those emotions. Then we talk about what was the point where you started to feel that you're shifting from a complete victim and you're starting to take actions. Which actions did you take? Why did you take those actions? How did these actions transform your next step? What was the turning point? What new values did you learn? What new things you got disappointed and you need to leave behind because they are no longer convictions and paradigms that are relevant to you? Now you discovered something about yourself. And then from there, let's list the 5 tools or skills that you have mastered during that event that can remind you later on how to use them faster and better and not to sink into victimhood in the next time. So what I'm pointing there through a series of questions, I'm giving you the tools to digest and to convert that experience from just emotional package and into insights and understandings and discovery about yourself. That what are the tools that will help you next time dealing with that? So for one person, it could be humor. For another person, it's determination. For another person, is let me help other people, and then I will start finding my own power. For other people, it's about change of words from very passive and very helpless words to a very strong words. For other people, it's reading inspirational stories of other people and then deciding that they want to do that. So there are a variety of ways, because we are dealing with those unplanned situations in a wide variety of ways. But be conscientious, grab the unplanned situation and start authoring, and by that start taking control of the narrative, and therefore develop your future skills and strength.
Yeah, I think that COVID is a great example. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about my situation that during COVID, in fact, my story completely changed, and I didn't realize it because I started this podcast, for example, during COVID because I was planning it for a long time, but I just didn't have time. And now I said, okay, now I have plenty of time. I boosted my business that because I was working for other people for a long time as a consultant, as a trainer. But then I said, hey, let's do some online courses. Let's do some new activities. So I think that indeed we can do this transition within the crisis, even if it is a financial crisis or a health crisis. Sometimes we can do some reflections and pivot and change the direction. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I'm gonna turn it now to you. So let's take that. This is a great example.
Yeah.
COVID, people were helpless. Elena decides to go and launch a podcast. What made you decide? You could have done a lot of other things. You could have binge on Netflix. You could have done a wide variety of other things. You decide to do that. What was the inner voice that told you that this is the right way for you to go?
I think that the fact that I had to work and travel a lot before COVID, I had a lot of international trainings and I worked for other people. It was like someone else's story, as you mentioned. And I finally had time to think, about my story, like what is my legacy, what do I want to do. And I continued with my own endeavors that I was planning already for a long time, but I just didn't have time to do that. So I think that this like emptiness and loneliness, as you mentioned, it also helped because we had time to reflect and okay, so where do I want to go now?
So let's try to just unpack right now what you said. So one thing you learned is you don't need to travel in order to be successful. So that's an old conviction we need to let go. Your formula until then was I need to travel in order to be successful. And now you're discovering you can be successful without that. Second thing, you're discovering that it's not your physical presence, but it's your words and it's your ideas. So you're now honing in on a superpower of words and ideas. And you're saying, this is really what's my superpower, and I can distribute it in new channels. And your turning point is that loneliness and emptiness could have gone a different direction, but you found the strength because you still want to make impact on people's lives, but you're doing it through the podcast as opposed to, so in, God forbid, if you'll have another loneliness/emptiness, again, you will come to it now knowing, hey, the old tools are not mandatory. The core of it is my ideas and words. How else can I distribute them? And you'll find that. And obviously, you enjoy interacting with other people. Otherwise, you would have gone into loneliness and just write articles, but you prefer the interaction with people. So these are examples of how the COVID experience, in your case, have let you let go the travel as a tool for success, distill it to the word and insights, but words and insights not in an isolation like a professor, but more like an interactive way through the new channel.
Yeah. And I think that many entrepreneurs actually have their own stories and own examples, how they transitioned in COVID. That's why it is great that you're using this example, which is fresh and new in everyone's memory. And I wanted to ask you, what about corporate employees? Because very often, and I know that you work with companies, you work with corporate teams. So what about people who, let's say, don't have their own choice and strategies and visions, and they're working for someone else, and they have to actually tell someone else's stories in a way. And what if we are stuck in those stories of our companies that are not longer serving us? How do we go about that then?
So I will not agree with the understanding that corporate stories are other people's stories and are not part of my stories. So first of all, let me start with that. Each and every one of us, it doesn't matter if we are an entrepreneur or a corporate employee, we work with people. Our work creates consequences on other people's lives. And you have a choice. You can focus on the tool, or you can focus on the impact that you make on other people. And each one of those impacts is a story that is yours and will be driven by your purpose as much as it will be driven by the purpose of the organization. There comes a point that if you define companies and organizations, they are defined by the processes that they have, but then they're also defined by the stories that they have. Stories is when the process no longer helps because it cannot solve that problem, and an employee needs to take initiative and save the day and create a story. That's when it happens. And every employee, no matter where they work, have a choice of either focusing on the process and hiding behind the process and say, this is not mine, I'm a victim of the corporate process, or they can look in the eyes of their customers or the eyes of the colleagues or the eyes of the other person and say, I'm here to help that person. And I'm going to create for them a remarkable story. And that's mine. I'm using the company as a platform. I'm using the company's tools as a platform, but I'm the owner of the story that's going to happen to Elena. And it's a personal choice. And where I see organizations stuck is because the employees made the choice to stick to the process and not to rise up, to create stories and focus on the impact. I call this the process operators versus the impact creators. Companies that thrive, our employees are ready to write their own chapters within the chapter of the company. Companies that do not, that survive, the employees are not writing any chapter. They're just repeating the processes and they're hiding behind them.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we see a lot of people who are victims in a victim mindset, and they, oh, I have to go to work, or I have to do this, or my boss tells me. And is there any way that you, as you are working with your clients and those cases that you're mentioning, is there any way how we can transition from this state of mind to having aligned vision and having common story?
So in Dare to Author, I argue that victimhood is a choice. We are choosing to relegate our future and the responsibility of it to other people. You call them managers, you call them imposter syndrome, you call them your fears, you call them other things. It's a choice. In every situation, you can choose to be a victim, blame everybody else, and have all the excuses in the world, or you can rise up and do the best you can within that, in every situation. Now, to the notion of victimhood, okay? I will take it to a bit of an extreme, but Elena, you and I were not advised by our parents if we want to be born into this world. So technically, we are a victim of that. We were also not advised where we're going to be born. We were also not advised which school we're going to go to or which friends are going to be in that school. So if you really want to follow the pattern of victimhood, we have plenty of excuses to blame the world for the wrong parents, for the wrong time of being born, for the wrong country, for the wrong friends, for the wrong economic conditions.
Yeah.
That's a reality. I'm sorry. Now the question is, what do you do with that? And that's the choice. We also are victims to our cynical voices in our heads. We're victims to imposter syndrome, where we're afraid. We're victims to a lot of these things. It's not that they don't exist. It's about the choice is to overcome them despite their existence and to rise up to a better version of ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. What would you recommend to team leaders who have such people in their teams who are complaining and, oh, I have to do this, and kind of going into victim mindset sometimes?
So I'm going to be a bit radical on this one. I believe that cynicism in the workplace is like cancer. The moment you allow a cynic in your team, he's now running the team, not you. Because the way that they behave, the way that they belittle the work, the way that they keep on asking, why bother? Why are you working so hard? And so on and so forth. They are now setting the standard for the rest of the organization. You're not in control anymore. Your cynics are in control. And everyone else is looking how you tolerate the cynic. You pay them every month. And they say, well, if they're getting paid for doing nothing, for complaining all the day, why do I need to do anything better? Why should I rise up to a better version? So I'm going to make this very, very clear to team leaders. If you tolerate cynics, you delegate to them the responsibility for the standards of performance for your organization. Be aware of that. Now, I'm not saying fire them. I'm saying take them in, have a conversation and say, what is the plan for you to participate back in the productive side of this business? Because I cannot have you continue to destroy performance with negativity and toxicity. That's what needs to be done. And I know that a lot of managers prefer to give recognition to good employees and they like to avoid speaking to the cynics because it's not a comfortable conversation, but it is even more critical to speak to them than to recognize the top performers, because these people are sending a message to the whole team. Why bother? Why are you working so hard? Nothing is going to happen. They are distributing hopelessness.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for this tip. It is so important, especially for leaders who are trying to be nice to everyone and trying to tolerate everyone. We really need to be harsh. Indeed.
It's about it's about the ability to ask the tough questions. It's not about being harsh for the sake of harsh, but really having to confront them with questions. Why are you in this mood? Why are you in this state of mind? What happened? What disappointed you? How can we help you? You don't have to be the one saying, oh, this has to stop immediately. Your attitude is a problem, etc. It's not going to work. Okay? But instead, ask the questions and let them answer. Let them look in the mirror. A good leader is not the one who has all the answers. A good leader is the one who knows how to ask the questions and be ready to have a frank conversation with them. So it's not about harshness. It's about firm set of questions that can help them digest how did they get to that situation. And quite honestly, the other really good question is, are you enjoying it? Are you having fun living in cynicism? Are you enjoying going back home every night and feeling like a failure? Is that a, because you know what? You're either gonna find your passion with us or you'll find it somewhere else. But so help me God, help yourself.
Yeah, that's a great strategy to ask questions and to listen and to be a good listener and don't avoid having those conversations.
Yeah,
Don't avoid speaking about the things that are happening
that's right.
in our teams. Yeah, so
That's right.
Lior, what would you recommend to sum up our conversation? What would you recommend to leaders who are listening to us? How can they start becoming authors of their lives, of their careers, of their teams? What are some of the strategies that we can leave them with?
So as I discussed in Dare to Author, and Dare to Author is really applying both to personal life and to professional life. So and there are chapters on both sides. First and foremost, the essence of leadership is doing the right thing when we don't know what the right thing is, when there is no textbook. You know, it's not about doing the common sense. It's about being courageous. And you need to accept that while you have plans, life sometimes happens in a very different way. And it is a choice how we're going to deal with those unplanned situations. As the book invites everyone, is don't ignore them. Don't just try to bring to closure the emotions. Convert the experience into future strengths and resilience. So next unplanned situation, you'll be stronger. The way you do that is through a disciplined approach of examining your approach, your values, asking yourself questions about past situations, checking the language that you choose. There's a whole host of things that can help you, and this is what the book is all about. But make sure that when things end, you don't just leave them like that. This is not about closure. This is about opening new opportunity. It's a completely different approach that looks at your past experiences not as something that you need to finish and end, but rather as something that will take you as a springboard to the next one. And you're only going to get there if you'll do the conversion from experiences to strength and future resilience. So if you want to be future ready, and the world is moving very fast, and a lot of unplanned things are happening, and ChatGPT may change the way you are managing, and so on and so forth. All these things are going to happen. Technology is not going to stop or slow down for us. Competition is not going to slow down for us. Customer expectations are not going to slow down for us. What we can do is develop a better discipline to convert experiences into future strength and become future ready and be actually enjoying that as opposed to feeling victim to it.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
inspiration. So we will put the link to your book, Dare to Author, in the show notes. And if our listeners want to reach out, want to contact you, where is the best way to find you?
LiorArussy.com. They will find articles, videos, a lot of resources free of charge. And then there is a way to reach out to me at lior@liorarussy.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lior. Thank you for being on Ideas and Leaders today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.